can't believe this. I can't tell you anything. Every time I tell you something, everybody else knows about it. No, I'm mad.
What is up, everybody? It is Brandon coming at you live from Smith's Grove once again, and today we're covering the direct sequel to Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and once again, directed by David Gordon Green. So after the commercial and critical success of Halloween 2018, Blumhouse greenlit not one, but two sequels set for the release in 2020 and 2021 respectively, with the first one being titled Halloween Kills, and the second one being titled Halloween Ends. So yeah, we got a full-on trilogy out of the deal, because that never goes wrong. Look at Star Wars! Halloween Kills, much like the original Halloween 2, picks up literally seconds after its predecessor, which is something I've always loved about both of them, honestly. Returning for this ramped-up sequel, Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, is back as Laurie Strode, Judy Greer and Andy Matichak return as Karen and Allison, Will Patton, who survived that wild Dr. Sartain treatment, is back as Frank Hawkins, and James Jude Courtney returns as Michael Myers. In a cool callback, Nancy Stevens returns for a fourth and possible final time as Marion Chambers, Charles Cyphers is back once again as Lee Brackett, and Kylie Richards returns as Lindsay Wallace. New to the cast is Robert Longstreet, who's playing Lonnie Elam in the character's first appearance as an adult in the Halloween franchise, as well as Weird Science and Breakfast Club actor Anthony Michael Hall, standing in for the character of Tommy Doyle. Now, not much has been said about Brian Andrews being offered the role again that I'm aware of, but from what I understand, Paul Rudd declined due to his ties with Ghostbusters Afterlife at the time. Of course, he just may not have wanted anything to do with it anyway. Kills is definitely what one would call a middle child of this new trilogy, and as a result faced its share of criticism and division amongst fans and critics. I would definitely liken it to that of Halloween 2, except the fact you knew going in that it wouldn't be concluded. Now, one thing this movie did do well was that awesome flashback scene, which we'll cover here in just a few, and where I thought the crew alongside Christopher Nelson, who returns as makeup and special effects artist, did an amazing job. Filming of Halloween Kills took place in the summer of 2019 in Wilmington, North Carolina, with the idea of filming both Halloween Kills and Ends back to back. That was quickly nixed, however, due to the schedule being way too intense for everyone. Music for the movie saw the return of John Carpenter, his son Cody, and collaborator Daniel Davies, with much of the score being completed before the pandemic. Speaking of, the original release for this movie was, as previously mentioned, set for October of 2020, but was pushed back a year later due to that wacky COVID pandemic, much like everything else was at the time. Now, because of this, for the first time simultaneously to the movie's theatrical release in October of 2021, Kills was also released on Peacock for the paid tiers of the service, so that those who didn't have access to theaters at the time could enjoy it at home, which is pretty cool, I guess. With a budget of around $20 million, Halloween Kills brought in a total of $133.3 million at the box office worldwide and received average reviews from critics and fans alike. Some praised the movie for its wild slasher elements, while others scorned it for its mess of a plot, overall dialogue choices like evil dies tonight chants, and it being polar opposite in feel to that of its predecessors. So no matter how you feel about this one, it definitely got the fans stirred up. Maybe not as bad as Ends, but we'll get to that soon enough. For now, grab your pitchforks, your baseball bats, and your irons, and let's take a look inside the sanitarium at Halloween Kills. The movie opens up with Cameron, finding Deputy Hawkins extremely messed up after that Dr. Sartain attack, but somehow still alive. We then get taken to my absolute favorite part of this movie with a flashback to 1978, mere seconds after Michael gets shot by Loomis and walks away. The scene here is basically to show us how Michael wound up back at Smith's Grove at the beginning of 2018, but also further develop the character of Hawkins just a little bit. We see Michael walking down an alley in all his OG glory as young Hawkins tries to get him to stop, even shooting at and missing a couple of times. Yeah, he sucks at shooting, and it gets worse, trust me. In fact, it never gets better. By the way, the score, the lighting, and costumes is an absolute treat here, and it really feels like you're right back there in 78's Halloween. Michael manages to get away for a spell and comes across a young Lonnie Elam that you may remember as the young bully from the original. Hawkins and his partner track Michael to his domain, finding a dead good boy there that Michael's probably been feasting on, and oh shit, Michael too! While Michael holds his partner as a body shield, Hawkins fires at Michael, but since he's such a loud lousy shot. The one time he actually hits something other than a wall or a fence, he hits his partner right in the neck. And in almost comedic fashion, Michael hightails it out of there as Hawkins fires more shots, missing him again. Somebody get this dude to the range pronto. In a cool callback, we get a look at Dr. Loomis, played by the film's art director Tom Jones Jr., who's all done up in prosthetics, although he looks pretty close without them already. It's such a cool surprise to see this. This dude could totally do more films as Loomis if he wanted to. Anyway, Michael is surrounded outside on his front lawn by the cops and Loomis as we head towards the title card and the opening credits with another cool updated theme with darker tones and choir sounds this time. We're then taken to the local pub where it's open mic night, and who better to deliver this cheesy, overly dramatic monologue than Tommy Doyle?
But the boogeyman is coming for me, and he's coming for you.
And this also gets much worse. He even gives us a recount of 78's events where they show footage of Lee and Annie after her death ripped straight out of Halloween 2. You know, the one that's not canon anymore. He then toasts to Laurie, and in doing so, it triggers a jump cut to the Strode clan in the back of the truck where we last left them in Halloween 2018. And they're visibly upset at the quick response of the firefighters because they want to make sure the boogeyman is dead and burned down in that house. Fortunately, he's not dead though, because he was hiding in Laurie's armory the whole time. He just got a little melty on one side. He makes his way outside after killing the first two firefighters and has his kick-ass Western-style standoff with the rest on the porch.
Buckle up, buckaroo!
This shit is about to get messy. After killing the rest of the first responders, we see Laurie and the girls arrive at Haddonfield Memorial, which has the same location used in Halloween 2. Get used to Laurie being here because this is more of a Michael movie. She's gonna be bedridden for a while, again. Oh, and we finally get a scene acknowledging Ray's death.
Dad's gone. He'll always be with us, even if we can't see him.
But that's it? Really? Okay, well, we'll move on then. Next up is some character development of that nice gravekeeper lady Sandra. You know, from the first movie, who actually spotted Michael while Aaron was getting a chub talking about Judas' murder. She's practicing her drone skills alongside her husband Phil, who realizes something's wrong when it gets tossed back from the other room. As Phil goes to check it out, he spots Michael and immediately tells Sandra to call the cops. Poor Phil doesn't make it that far though, as Michael grabs him and pulls him through that glass door. Ugh. Sandra manages to make it into the kitchen and unlocks the back door, but she freezes for some reason while Michael grabs a fluorescent light from over the sink and stabs her in the neck with it. So just so you know, the characters in this movie are grade A dumb. And this is not the only time in this movie where this shit happens and someone just stands there. Well, after this gruesome attack on Sandra, he drags Phil into the kitchen to try out the couple's best cutlery. I think that's a little bit overdone there, Mikey. What's even worse is Sandra just sits there and watches as she bleeds out. Not dead though. Spoiler. Back at the bar, Tommy and the crew notice the news report on TV covering the bus crash as well as the attack at Julian's house that just happened. Since Marcus and Vanessa, who we briefly saw in 2018, live across the street from Julian, they decide to head out. While Marcus doubles back to get his stethoscope again, Vanessa finds a shadowy figure in the back seat of her car. This sends Tommy to the rescue as he grabs a bat from inside the bar to take care of what he believes is the boogeyman. Tommy does manage to get a couple good whacks at the car before the supposed boogeyman takes off in it. You know it's not Michael though, because for one, Michael could drive way better than that. And two, you can see that white umbrella left in the passenger seat when the mob catches up to the car. And in case you were wondering, it's this penguin looking dude from the first movie and the only other patient unaccounted for besides Michael per the news report about the bus crash. He'll come into play again later though. We then head back out to Laurie's compound where Sheriff Barker and his first responders are now responding to the original first responders who had been massacred during their first response. Meanwhile, Cameron shows up to the hospital to tell Karen and Allison that Tommy is organizing mobs of people to find and kill Myers. Karen is still under the impression, however, just like Laurie, that he's on his way there to find Laurie, so she pleads with him to stay, but it falls on deaf ears. Outside, Tommy and Lonnie get strapped up, with Tommy asking the most Illinois question ever.
You have a permit for all these?
You know where you don't have to have a permit for those? Missouri, baby! Lindsay, Marion, and the rest of the crew come back and team up to find Michael. They stop by a local park where Lindsay approaches some Halloween 3 kids who tells her there's some pervert in a white mask stalking them. When they spot him again, this time it's behind the crew's car and he's holding the third Halloween 3 kid's head. He's killing them kids again, man. He pulls an oldie but a goodie out by jumping on the car and grabbing Marion through the window. She gets a little trigger happy though on him and wastes her ammo before she can get her moment.
This is for Dr. Loomis.
He kills Marion for the second time in this franchise and then gives us a wicked kill to Marcus by stabbing him in his eye. The next kill might be one of my absolute favorites in this ridiculous trilogy. As Vanessa makes her comeback, she's firing off rounds with her Desert Eagle only for Michael to kick the door out towards her as she gets too close, thus hitting her and causing her to accidentally shoot herself. Just the most random and outlandish shit ever. It also amuses me when Hollywood puts desert eagles in their movies and above all else has women shooting them like they're nothing. For those who have never shot a desert eagle, most women and even some smaller men probably couldn't handle it that well. The thing is like 10 inches long and like 5 pounds. And if you don't think that's a lot, it's a lot for a gun, a handgun. I promise you. Not to mention the energy and muzzle velocity of the gun when it's fired. I will say though that even though this is ridiculous, it's still somehow not more egregious than a Terminator Genesis scene with Sarah Connor. There's just no way she can do that one-handed. Anyway, Lindsay blindsides Michael with a trick-or-treat bag full of bricks, and after a brief struggle and a chase scene, manages to escape him. Tommy and his crew show up shortly after to find the bodies of their friends displayed on the playground equipment. They find Lindsay and they get her to the hospital where Deputy Hawkins is also in recovery now, being placed in the same room as Lori conveniently. Outside in the waiting area, what seems like the whole damn town is at the hospital now, and they're ready to lock down the perimeter and wait Michael out. Even Lori is giving herself a shot of the good stuff to get ready. I don't know how she got it, but okay. Across town at the old Myers house, which I haven't mentioned yet, has been restored because of a couple that I also haven't mentioned yet is now living there. Big John and husband Little John, who have had run-ins with those shitty Halloween 3 kids earlier in the night, are finally settled down to watch a movie when they hear a ruckus.
Could you describe the ruckus, sir?
Big John grabs the small knife while Little John grabs the big knife, and they're now ready to defend their home, which unsurprisingly is decorated very well. Big John finds Michael first, unfortunately, and gets the coolest kill of the movie by far when his armpit gets stabbed and his eyeballs popped out. Gross. And one last little bit of irony, Little John finds Big John dead and also Michael staring out Judith's window. Big John, having just received the coolest death of this movie and perhaps in this new trilogy entirely, Little John has the opposite and has the absolute worst death in the trilogy. But at the same time, it's also a little funny listening to Michael McDonald scream off screen for some reason. Like, what's with him and funny deaths? Back at the hospital, the Penguin shows up to get medical attention, but because everyone's retarded and already looking for Michael at every turn, they think this poor little dude is him and chase him through the hospital. Karen and Lori try to tell that crazy mob that it's not Michael, but no one listens. All they see is blood at this point. As the mob backs him into a corner, Hawkins is shown telling Lori that due to his own regret of killing his partner, he stopped Loomis from killing Michael. Lori still blames it all on Michael anyway, and that he's infected this entire town with evil. Now this is some of that pretentious shit I think that we're going to start getting into, and it's even worse than the next one. Upstairs, in an attempt to save the Penguin from the mob, Karen locks him in the hall but can't stop the mob from trying to break the door down anyway. The poor inmate decides it's better to take matters into his own hands instead of getting beaten to death by this mob and then jumps. This evil die tonight chant by this point is also way annoying. After they realize what they'd done, Hawkins explains to an upset Karen and Lori that it was never about her anyway and that it was all arranged by Dr. Sartain. It's here that we find out that Michael's only ever really wanted one thing, and that's his home. Tommy and Karen saddle up to take Michael on now that they know where he's going. What they don't know, however, is that Lonnie, Cameron, and Allison have already figured this shit out too. Lonnie, who has turned out to be kind of an awesome character at this point, decides that he also wants to remain the dumbest and decides to go in alone and not wait for backup. Almost immediately, Allison and Cameron hear a gunshot, to which they decide to go in and help. They stumble onto the bodies of Little John and Big John propped up in the position, much like that photo that they showed. Oh, how sweet. What's not sweet, however, is poor Cameron finding his dead dad stuffed up into the attic. I don't know how Michael worked this fast, but he did. Michael springs out of the closet after and stabs Cameron a couple times, with Allison getting a couple of stabs of her own in. Michael doesn't take that shit too kindly though and throws her ass down the stairs, thus breaking her leg. Allison tries to get Michael away from Cameron by distracting him, but it didn't work as he finishes Cameron off by smashing his head between the railing and snapping his neck. He has Allison right where he wants and is about to kill her, but then Karen shows up with a pitchfork to save her. Because what would a leader of a new mob be without a pitchfork? She manages to take Michael's mask and taunt him away from the house and Allison and leads him through an alley to the next block over where security guard Brackett, Tommy, and more of the townspeople trap him. Even this angry looking lady and this other lady with an iron. Get ready, Michael, because she's about to iron those creases out your ass.
It's Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare.
They beat Michael to a pulp and Karen stabs him in the neck before leaving him for the rest of the mob to dispose of. Before Brackett can execute him though, Michael comes to life, killing Brackett and the others in slow motion as Karen looks up and sees Kid Michael in the upstairs window. Tommy is then the last one to go, getting a little stabby stab from Michael and a baseball bat to the head as well. Looks like there's a new Breakfast Club, Tommy, and you ain't in it. Karen heads up to the bedroom Michael was in earlier, where somehow Michael has made it back already and he stabs Karen to death repeatedly. And in true Psycho fashion, I might add. The movie ends as Michael looks at his reflection in the window over Karen's dead body, and we roll to credits. And that was Halloween Kills, released in 2021 and directed by David Gordon Green. I'm not gonna lie, when I first watched this movie, I was a little dumbfounded at the end. Like, I couldn't believe they killed Karen. What the fuck was the point in this? I mean, part of me even thought she was gonna get the Hawkins treatment and somehow make it out alive for the next sequel. I just didn't know what the hell they were doing. And to be honest, I'm not sure they did either. Now, overall, I did enjoy the movie, and I still do mostly. Like, while it's not as grounded as 2018 and it heads straight back into slasher territory, it's still a pretty solid outing. The kills were gruesome, the cinematography was good, especially in that flashback scene, and that flashback scene is hands down my favorite part of this entire trilogy. To me, it just shows that we could have a solid entry and go back and start again in like the 80s or something. Like, there's all kinds of ideas you can do, and you don't even really have to retcon much. And once again, the score and the practical effects were outstanding as well. And practical effects, to me, are still the definitive way to go in just about any genre, especially horror. And although most of the people in this movie were red shirts, it was really cool to see the legacy characters back, and I even like some of the new ones too. And Big John and Little John were entertaining as hell. It just kind of sucks that most of them were absolutely dumb. Which brings me to my cons. The characters are dumb. Like typical slasher movie dumb. Now, if that's what you're in the mood for, that's great. But it seems even worse than 2018, so yeah. And just the overall direction of this movie versus 2018 just makes it feel like it's a little bit different at times. Like it's either, if it's not made by a different crew, it feels like it was definitely written by somebody different, and this doesn't connect as well as you would like it to. And as far as the acting goes, in and of itself, it was decent, but the dialogue was absolute trash. Poor Anthony Michael Hall did the best that he could with what he had to work with, I think, but just didn't deliver, man. He came off overly dramatic and way too serious. It just didn't fit for me. It's no disrespect to him, but yeah. Another con I have in this is the story of Michael and what he is or is supposed to be. It seems like they spend a lot of time in this trilogy contradicting themselves on whether or not he's like supposed to be a man or supernatural, or just an evil guy, or like evil in a man's body. And there's just way too many arguments, especially online, on whether or not he should be supernatural or not, or is or not. Well, I can tell you one thing, in this movie, he's supernatural. He has to be. You can't have feats of strength like that and take that kind of punishment and not be. Even Laurie says at one point that the more he kills, the more he transcends. Now, I know you could take that literally or figuratively, but that right there and the fact that they made it so ambiguous just tells me how pretentious this is. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. If you think that's bad, just wait until the next one, when it sparked all this debate on why he's in the state he's in and ends, and why, like, what he was doing in between, and we'll get to it. The hospital stuff was another bugaboo, obviously. I don't hate it, I guess, but if you got rid of like 90% of it, it wouldn't hurt the movie at all. It'd probably help it. It just bogs it down way too much with, trying to include all that Michael's evil is infecting the town nonsense. It's starting to plant that seed. And then also all the stuff with the penguin guy, which I'm just going to keep calling him penguin guy because I don't give a shit. But all that stuff, it's sad, but it's unneeded. And also, of course, evil dies tonight. Wow. I did love hearing during the production of this film that the hospital scenes in this were filmed at the same location filmed in Halloween 2. Unfortunately, it just wasn't utilized properly, in my opinion. If we want to just make this a straight up slasher movie, a good slasher movie, then have the showdown at the hospital again. You didn't have a problem pulling a bunch of the same scenes or ideas from old movies in. This is kind of the way to do it, man. If you're going to have this location, utilize it well, instead of just evil dies tonight bullshit. Maybe even burn half of that shit to the ground or something trying to kill him, right? Like, it would have made way more sense in them doing that instead of him killing a mob of people, going back home, killing Karen, and then disappearing immediately after just to go into a sewer for 4 years to be weaker. What? Oh, I can't wait to unload on Halloween Ends. Lastly, for cons, obviously just killing Karen makes no fucking sense to me. At least not in that way. Her death has about as much meaning and thought behind it as Ray's did in the first one. Like, what are you doing? For my score of kills, I'm going about middle of the road. It hits all the right marks for the fun and cheesy slasher, but it just gets bogged down a little bit by the direction they chose and the dialogue. So for that, I'm giving Halloween Kills a 3.2 out of 5. And I believe that's about the same score that I gave Halloween 6, the producer's cut, so that's about where I'd place it. Kills is enjoyable enough, just like Halloween 6, and honestly, I appreciate it a lot more after Ends. Both of them. And that flashback in this movie really saves it for me for sure. Okay, so it's almost time after all these months to wrap up the series, at least what's available to us so far, right? Now, I have already reviewed Halloween Ends at the very beginning when I first started this channel last year, but I am going to be giving it one more go, and I'm going to be doing this proper treatment for it, just like the rest of these. Although there are some days where I think I would rather meet Vanessa's fate than to do that. So get ready, next up is Halloween Ends, and we're going to dive into my issues with this movie. And for the sake of trying it one more time, I'm going to see if I can at least find a couple of redeeming qualities about it. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Stay sane.